Hey, what's up, you guys? It's Nikki with Nikki Drafts, and we're here today with part 1 of drafting your own custom bodice blocks. If you're new to my channel, I'm Nikki. I'm a full-time teacher, professor, and fashion designer, and I teach people how to sew, draft, and draw. If you're here to learn how to draft, I have a playlist in my channel on drafting basics. You can watch that to be introduced to all the tips and techniques you'll need for today's video. So if you have zero drafting background, I suggest you start with my Dart Manipulation 101 and progress through my drafting tutorials, and we'll be back here when you're ready. Just some information for your use. You can check out nikkidrafts.ca for some free resources and drafting supplies to help you with today. Also, please take a look at the description for all the tools and materials we will be using in today's video. Today we'll be making a bodice block. Let me see if I can do this. So this is just the front because, again, we're just doing part 1, front first, but a block is essentially just a fitted, unstyled garment, this specifically being for your top, that we can then use later to manipulate and restyle into new designs. So the block is a really important foundation for all of your pattern drafting and design work, and it's really important that you get a really nice fit on your block. Now, I have been teaching block making for years. I've been teaching pattern drafting for about 10 years now, and I have simplified this process as easy as possible. I've uploaded the beginning part of this tutorial to show you all the different measurements that we will be using for this block and how to take those measurements. And then the second part of this video has all the drafting and step-by-step guide. I also have the measurements linked in the description. So if you already know how to do that and you want to just skip to the drafting component, I'm going to have that in the description as well with a timestamp for you. I'm super passionate about teaching people how to make their own clothing and how to do it properly. This is not a channel for craftiness or gimmicky. This is real industry standard information by a professional fashion designer, filtered into a way that is digestible and easy to understand. If you guys want to draft along with me, have me critique your stuff, or give you free feedback, again, this is 100% free, you can check out the Sewing and Drafting Collective. That is a Facebook group where anyone can join and ask for feedback, information, advice, share their work, and it's just a beautiful, positive space for creatives and designers who want to share and grow together. So without filling up this video with too much of my rambling, let's head right into it. So we are going to need some measurements for this block, and I want to show you guys how to measure correctly. Now, I have tied a ribbon around my waist so I can keep that as a stationary place, and it's easier for me to reference. Again, if you were to bend sideways, where your body creases, your waist is that crease. It's the tiniest part of the torso. I tied a ribbon around that so I can have that as a reference point. I also opted for a sweater that has a zipper that will be my center front. That's easier for me to use. And this side seam is kind of sitting in a place where I would like my side seams to be. So I'm wearing something that already fits pretty well, and this is gonna just help me with measuring. You also wanna make sure that whatever you're wearing when you measure is pretty form-fitting, and then you're wearing, like if you usually wear bras, take your measurement with a bra. If your garment that you're gonna make, you're not gonna be wearing a bra, don't wear a bra when you're taking your measurements. So this is really important because padding and the different types of bras can really affect your bust level, the cup size, all those things. So first things first, we're gonna do our bust arc. So for the front, which is what we're doing today, I'm gonna measure from my side seam across the apex of the bust to my center front. Now, this is a little bit difficult to measure on a person, like on yourself, but you could have a buddy come. You wanna make sure that your measuring tape is parallel to the waist and the floor, so it's nice and even. You don't wanna do anything on an angle. The second measurement what we want to take is our front waist arc. So this will again be from the side seam to the center front at the waist. This one's easy because you can just put it right on top of that ribbon. Now to our bust arc and our waist arc, we're going to be adding 1/4 of an inch to this measurement. That is for ease. If we were to just take our measurements and make our block without adding any ease, you wouldn't have any room to breathe. We need a little bit of room to breathe in these blocks because these are for wovens. They're not for stretch knits. So we need some breathing room. The next measurement we're going to need is something called the full length. So this is pretty much covering our whole torso. So our full length is measured from this neck point, like imagine a line dividing your front and back shoulder right to the base of the neck. So from that point, if you push on it, it kind of can get tense there. It's like where Spock knocks people out. Straight down over the bust point or apex of the bust to the waist. You want to stand up nice and straight when you're doing this. So if you were to be measuring this on yourself, you should do it in front of a mirror. And that is your measurement. We're going to be adding 1/8 of an inch to our full length measurement, again, for a little bit of ease. The next measurement we're going to be taking is something called the across shoulder. So this measurement is taken right from the bone of our shoulder blade, I don't really know what you call this bone, but right from here at the very top of your shoulder where your shoulder seam usually sits into the middle of our collarbones. So we want to measure from that point to the center of the collarbone. And that is our across shoulder measurement. We are going to be subtracting 1/8 of an inch from this measurement. Okay, so again, from the tip of the shoulder to the collarbone here, minus 1/8. I'm going to have all these measurements with a matching technical as well, explaining where everything is, linked in the description for you guys to download. The next measurement we're going to need is our center length. So that's literally what it sounds like. It's the length from, again, where those collarbones are going to connect, where we want our block to start, to the waist down the center of the body. So this is important for determining the length of your block for the front. So again, looking straight ahead from center down to that waist, we're going to take that measurement and we're just using that as is. We're not adding any ease to that measurement. So the next measurement is our shoulder slope. So you want to stand nice and straight, and we want to measure both left and right side for this to see if we have asymmetric shoulders. So if you have more than 1/8 of an inch difference between your left shoulder slope and your right shoulder slope, you have asymmetric shoulders. You might have to make a left and right side to your block. Now, this would be really common with people who have one hip higher than the other, people who have scoliosis, and other conditions that would affect the symmetry of specifically the spine and hips. So it's nothing to be freaking out about. It's just something to be aware of. And if you make a custom block for yourself, taking this into consideration, you'll get a much better fit. So again, from here down to the center front waist, again, this is hard to measure on yourself. You might want to get a buddy for this. And that is your shoulder slope. We're going to be adding 1/8 of an inch to this measurement. Next, we need our bust depth. So we need to know where to actually position our bust line on our block. So from there, we want to measure from the apex of the bust, aka the bust point. So this is the highest peak of the bust. It's usually where your nipple is. Straight down to your waist. Okay, so you want to make a 90-degree angle to the waistline, measure from the bust point straight down. We're not adding anything to this measurement. We're going to take that as is, and that is your bust depth. The next measurement we need is our shoulder length. So that will be done from the base of the neck to the tip of the shoulder. So it's almost like measuring your shoulder seam, but it's from the tip of the shoulder to the base of the neck. Again, hard to measure on yourself. Use a mirror or a buddy. We are not adding any ease or anything to this measurement. We're using it as is. The next measurement we're going to need is the bust span. So this is how far apart our busts are from each other. So you want to measure from apex to apex, aka nipple to nipple. Take that measurement and divide it in half, and that will be your bust span. The next measurement we're going to need is our across chest. So that is from our center front line to our mid armhole. This is going to be kind of right above your bust location, okay? So our across chest measurement, we're going to be adding 1/4 of an inch to this. So again, that's from the mid armhole to the center front, usually right above your bust, okay? Right there. So again, the mid armhole, and you want to kind of like put your arm forward. And that crease, that's where we want the bodice to end comfortably, okay? Now the next measurement we're gonna need is our dart placement. Now last week, 2 weeks ago now, I'm really bad, I made a tutorial on how to draft our skirt blocks, which we completed and did our fitting for. Your dart placement for your front is going to be the measurement we have from the center front to that first dart leg along our waist. We're not adding any ease to that. That is our dart placement measurement, and this is so when we sew our bodice up, our dart will be in the same place as the skirt, so if we did choose to make a dress from these blocks, our darts would line up, and it's just much more cohesive and visually pleasing than having mismatched darts. Okay, and the next measurement we're gonna need is our new strap. So our new strap is placed at the base of the neck shoulder intersection, and we're going to measure down and across to where our side seam and our waist intersect. So from here, down, across to where our shoulder and waist intersect. We're gonna be adding 1/8 of an inch to that measurement, and that is our new strap. The last measurement we're going to need is our side length. So we wanna go from comfortably below our armhole. So maybe if you were to put your finger right in your armpit and to measure about 1 inch down from there to the waist at the side seam. Again, a difficult area to measure on yourself, but you wanna be standing straight for this. That is going to be our side length. And again, we're not adding any measurements to that. We're just gonna use that as is. Now that all your measurements are done, we can start drafting. I made a little mini sample of what we're about to make. So this is the half size sample. I'm also gonna link measurements in the description, so the list of measurements you need, and then here are mine just for reference. Grab yourself a nice big sheet of paper, and we're going to start with a vertical line down the right hand side. This has to be long enough to be covering your entire bodice, so your full length plus some extra wiggle room. At the top of the line, square to the left 90 degrees. This is going to be point A as our intersection. Measure down from point A your full length measurement plus 1/8, and we're going to label this as point B. Square to the left of point A and point B, making sure that it's 90 degrees. If your blocks aren't 90 degrees, they won't be accurate and you'll end up having fit issues later. Your vertical A to B line is your center front. I like to label it so that it's very clear for me later. Move along that top line from A, or across shoulder measurement, minus 1/8. This will become point C. Square a line down from C, 3 inches in length. You don't have to mark this one. Measure up from B to D along the center front line. This is your center front length measurement. Mark that point D. Square in from D, 4 inches. You don't have to mark this point. Measure left from B along your bottom line, your bust arc plus 1/4 of an inch. Mark this point E, and at point E, you want to square up for 11 inches. Measuring on an angle from B, we're going to twist the ruler until our shoulder slope plus 1/8 hits that squared down line from C. This is going to be point G. This helps us find our shoulder point. So again, use your shoulder slope from B plus 1/8 of an inch until it intersects with that C line, and this is G, like George. Measuring along that diagonal line from G, use your bust depth to find point H. So again, measure along that line, your bust depth, and this is point H, like Harry. Starting from point G, measure at an angle your shoulder length until it intersects with the C to A line. This is going to be point I, like ice cream. Make a 90-degree angle to the GI line at I and square until it crosses that D extension line. Making a 90-degree angle to our center front line, square in right from H until it intersects with the center front. This will become point J, like Joseph. Going in from point J along that line, measure your bust span plus 1/4 of an inch to find point K like Kellogg's. Measure from D to J and divide in half to find point L, like Lucy. Squaring in from L at 90 degrees, use your across chest measurement plus 1/4 of an inch to find point M. Once you've found point M, square up and down from M to help make a guideline for shaping our armhole. Next, measuring our skirt block to our first dart leg in order to find our dart placement, we're going to use that measurement and go left of B to find point F, which is our dart placement. Square 3/16 down from F to give yourself some nice curvature in the front waist. Using our new strap measurement, we're going to measure from point I down across the block until it intersects with that line coming up from E. This is going to be point N like Nicole. Measure up from N our side length. This is going to be point O like octopus. Measure 1.25 inches left of N to find point P. This is a standard measurement for someone with a B cup size. For C cup, D, or double D, please see the measurements on screen for your P to N measurement. Connect O and P with a straight line, making sure that it is the same measurement as your side length. Next, connect P and F together with a straight line. We're going to use this to help us formulate our waistline and dart. Measure along your P to F line, your waist arc plus 1/4 inch of ease, but minus your dart intake. So this will be the remainder of your waistline. Connect point F to H and then point H to Q to begin forming our waistline dart. Measure F to H and then measure down from H along Q, marking that same measurement. We want to make sure our dart legs are the same length. This new corrected length will be point R, like Rachel. Grab your French curve and blend from point R to P in a smooth upward curve. Now blend from F to B with a nice smooth curve line. Measure from R to F and divide in half. This is your dart intake. We're finding the halfway point so that we can lower our dart end away from the bust point. If you'd like to watch about dart manipulation or dart anatomy, I'm going to link those videos here so you can know exactly what I'm doing in these steps. We're going to move our dart end away from the bust point, which is point H, by 5/8. This is just to prevent pointy, unshapely busts from happening. It sits a lot nicer on the form and it looks a lot better when we do this. We never leave the dart end at the bust point. We always want to move it away from there so that it's sitting nicely over the bust. Then I redraw my dart legs into my new dart end. Square in from point O. We only need to square in for a little bit. This is going to give us a little guideline to help draw our armhole curve in later. I'm also going to square in from the GI line. Again, this is to help us make the correct shaped armhole and guide our curve nicely so it can cross from front to back without a point. Grab your French curve again and we're going to draw our armhole curve from point G through to that guideline up from M and then again into point O. We're trying to make a nice smooth transition. My French curve is a little bit big, so I'm going to be using it in a couple steps. You can also find French curves that are specifically made for armholes on Amazon. For me, I'm lazy today, so I'm just flipping my French curve around so that I can get a nice smooth connection from these points to create my armhole curve. I know this block might seem like a lot of work at this point, but we're almost done and it's gonna fit so nicely when you're done. You can make so many cool projects with it, and I'm really gonna be basing a lot of videos and drafting on this channel with it, and I believe that learning how to pattern draft properly is so beneficial. Now we want to do our neckline. So I'm going to square in from the middle of that I to D intersection line for about 1/8 of an inch. And then I'm going to use that 1/8 of an inch mark out from point D and point I to guide my French curve. So I'm going to place my French curve in there, trying to keep my center front neck 90 degrees, square to that 1/8 mark, and then up into point I. Again, I'm trying to go for a gentle curve so I don't have pointy neck. To make a nice scooped neckline curve here. I'm just fixing this up with my pen now. Don't freehand your curves, I was just being lazy. The drafting is done. Now we just have to trace. So I'm tracing out my center front, my neckline, my waist, my dart, my shoulder line, my side seam, armhole, just my good copy lines. You guys, you do not have to trace out all your different construction lines when you're doing this. You just need the final version. I never cut up my pattern drafts, and my students will hear me say this in class all the time. Never cut your drafts. Your draft is your master blueprint. If we make a mistake, we need something to go back to, and if you cut your draft up, you have no starting point to return to. Make sure you're also marking your bust point out. That's really important for a block that we have that information on there. Again, the more kind of useful information you can put on here, the more you'll love yourself later. So common things that I'll often label my blocks with is my waist and bust measurements. I'll also sometimes put my weight down. Like if you're someone that fluctuates a lot, you might want to write the date and the weight you're at when you made this block. This way, when you're using it, you know which ones fit you or what's the best representation of your current fit, and it just helps you later down the road when you're doing more drafting and manipulation to figure out what you kind of started with and how this block is fitting. You'll notice I also use my rulers and French curves when I'm tracing. There's no point in doing an accurate draft and then just freehanding and ruining all your hard work. After I'm done tracing, I will be labeling this with the front, and I'll also be adding 1/2 inch of seam allowance to my shoulder and side seam because I am prepping this for a fitting. So I haven't fit this block yet. I don't want to just start sewing with it just in case like there's any fit errors. You always want to start with a block that fits perfectly. This is our finished trace, and again I'm just going to be adding in the information we talked about. I like to put in a little bit of the bust line. I like to label. I'm writing bodice block front. I'm writing my name on it so I know whose it's for. I'm going to be labeling my waistline, my center front, and other measurements. Again, guys, we haven't fit this yet, so I will put it on hard paper as a good copy once I've done my fit, which I'm going to be explaining in next week's video after I draft the back how to fit these and correct common fit issues. We also still have to true our dart because right now we don't have any dart intake, so I'm going to be folding and truing this dart just to make sure that I have that dart intake there. Again, if you have not done this before, you're not sure what I'm doing on camera, you're going to want to check out my dart manipulation video and Dart Anatomy 101 so you can see how I do this and get the correct information on truing your dart. But it's really important that we don't just leave the dart shadow empty, and we need to true our waistline as well. Like right now, see how the waistline's kind of pointy? I want to go ahead and smooth that with my French curve. Again, this is just increasing the cohesion and how this fits and everything's looking nice and professional. I can always tell an amateur drafter right off the bat when they have these kind of little simple errors in their patterns. I didn't have my tracing wheel today, so I cheated a little bit and I used a marker and just kind of went over the same area of the paper over and over again to kind of bleed through and trace into my dart shadow. There's me checking to see if it went through. I don't know where I put my tracing wheel. I've been promising you guys I was going to show you it for a couple weeks and I just can't find it. I'm rambling anyway, it doesn't matter, but use a tracing wheel, it'll be a lot easier for you. To finish off, simply use your French curve to trace out your dart intake, and then add notches and drill hole to show where you're going to sew. Do this accurately so that your final product is accurate and fits correctly. Here's a side-by-side of the draft and the final product. I've done this. You can see which lines you need to trace and which lines you need to leave. So our center front is indicated here, our dark shadows and everything. So this is what it would look like sewn, obviously half scale. Here I've just made the final lines darker so it's easier for you guys to see what to trace. So here is our completed front. When I cut this out, I cut it on fold and I did draw my center front line over it for alteration and fitting purposes. So next week we're going to be making the back of this. I also added 1/2 inch of seam allowance on my shoulders and my side seams. So all I have to do next week is fit my back, or cut my back out, make my back. We'll sew these together, and then in that part 2 video where we do the back, I will try this on and go over fit issues, common issues, how to adjust neckline, shoulder, bust line, and whatnot. So we're going to be going over all that next week when we do the back. It is looking pretty good so far. Again, if you can hold it up to yourself and it's already looking really off and you probably went wrong somewhere in the drafting, so it's always a good idea to kind of look back at your measurements, look back at your draft, make sure everything was squared and neat and your measurements were accurate. And that you followed step by step, and that will usually kind of point out where you went wrong with the drafting. I hope you guys enjoyed that video on how to make your own bodice block for the front. Next week I'll upload the back. And if you like this content, if you want to learn how to draft and sew properly to North American standard, then follow along. I upload every single week, and I am so passionate about teaching people how to make high quality clothing that's done correctly and professionally. The stuff that's available on mass market for us to buy is just of lower quality. It's killing our environment, it's making us sick, it's falling apart, it's wasting our money. And I think the solution is to reach back into more of a self-produced method. We can invest in nicer textiles, we can make clothes that fit and look expensive and sit properly on the body and make you look incredible. And this is information that has traditionally been very exclusive. I haven't really seen a lot of videos online of people teaching this properly. I'm probably dumb for giving this information away for free. Again, I teach professionally full-time. I've been teaching for over 10 years, but I really want people to have access to this information because it's becoming less and less available in schools, and it's not being taught to the same standard that it used to be. So if you like what I'm doing, again, I'm uploading every single week. Follow along.